Good morning, everyone. It is great to have you, the people that are here in the building with us, and also welcome if you're online. Would you join with us now in worship? And maybe we're just waiting for Cole. Oh, go. There we go. Would you stand with us?
Before
Let's keep singing today as God's people. Let's come together and worship. salvation is in his blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come. Well, this morning Mark is going to be preaching on one of the heroes of the Bible, Job. And one of the things we know about Job is a lot of the hard times that he went through. And so I thought this morning that we'd bring back an old song about the hard times. And this is the Desert Song, which talks about glorifying God even in the hard times. So let's sing this one together.
This is my prayer. In all of our life, in every season, he is still God. Isn't that so good to know? I'm sure you may sit down if you like. I'm sure amongst us who are here today, there are those in a really difficult season and those who are cruising along quite easily. But he is still God. He's still there to rejoice in and to praise in every situation. And I'm so thankful for that. I'd like to welcome everyone here this morning, whether you be watching us online or here this morning in person. It's great to see you. It's great to see people coming back to church in increasing numbers every week. It's really good to see, and I, for one, really enjoy being part of this community and worshipping God together. Now, there's not a lot to announce. None of our normal practices, our youth and kids and all sorts of things have come back quite yet. So we just carry on as usual. Tonight we meet again at 6 p.m. And today we have heard Mark is preaching on Job. Next week, Simon will be giving us a message on Ecclesiastes. So I hope that you enjoy. I will just pray for us first. Lord God, we thank you that you are God of all seasons. We thank you that you are here, that you love us incredibly no matter what is happening in our lives right now and no matter what is happening in the world around us. We thank you that we can find our stability and our anchor in you, that you are unchanging and that you are always worthy of our praise. As Mark comes up, I encourage you to say hello to the people sitting near you at this moment. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Let me try that again, see if I can get a response. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hey, that's good. Good morning, everyone online. Great to be here with you today. Hey, a difficult topic this morning. Pray for me. As I did my prep through the week, I felt like, oh man, this is really hard to do and to do well, and I can't hope to address all the issues around a topic around when life hurts. But hopefully just touch on 2 or 3 ideas which will be helpful. Inspired by the example of this guy called Job in the Old Testament, an unsung hero, but who is a hero because he endured against the odds through immense personal pain and hardship, and is therefore an inspiration to us about how what we can learn and where God is in our lives when life hurts. Let me start by sharing a little bit, the first part of a testimony by a lady called Vanitha Rendell Arisna, who's written a book recently called Walking Through Fire. Walking Through Fire. It's a bit of her autobiography. This is from her testimony. I contracted polio as an infant, and the doctors mistreated it. They mistakenly gave me cortisone to lower my fever, but it actually allowed the virus to spread throughout my body, which left me paralysed within days. My first surgery was at age 2, and I endured 21 major operations throughout my childhood. Only when I was 7 years old was I able to walk for the first time. The hospital functioned as a second home. I lived there for months at a time, once passing 9 months in a body cast. I could only see my family on weekends during the brief visiting hours, and without parents around to guide me, I grew up on my own, making up my own rules and assumptions about life. And since there was no one to hear my complaints, I learned to stifle my feelings and do what I was told. Life between hospital visits was even more traumatic. Kids made fun of my pronounced limp. Classmates bullied me frequently. A group of boys threw stones at me and called me a cripple. I became used to that word. After that, I kept to myself. I was cheerful and uncomplaining, and when I was, people praised me. So this became my new persona. People began seeing me as sweet and courageous, except for my sister. She alone bore the brunt of my bitterness and anger. So growing up, I was angry with God. To me, he was either heartless or distant, if he even existed at all. I wanted nothing to do with him. Today we explore a little bit of the life of Job and some things that maybe we can learn about God's purpose when life hurts. And the reality is, isn't it, that when life hurts, it's common for folk to respond in a similar ways to Vanitha's story about how she responded as a child. To ask questions about God's character and his purpose and his existence, to wonder if he's real, to step back and keep God at a distance, to feel like God is unloving and unfair. That certainly was that experience of Vanitha when she was just a little girl. Job's story is similar in some ways, different in others. He was a pretty together and cool guy. We're told that in Job chapter 1 that he was a man who was blameless and upright. He feared God, he shunned evil. He was actually the greatest man among all the people of the East. This is the greatest guy, the most impressive person there going around. The perfect man, not just the perfect man, but he had the perfect life. He was living the dream, happily married, incredibly wealthy, respected, successful, and 10 kids. Who's not sure if 10 kids is really living the dream? We love kids. Kids, if you're here today, we absolutely love you. You're absolutely amazing. But 10 does seem like that's stretching it a little bit too far, doesn't it? Anyway, that was Job, and it just looked to all the world like he was living the dream. And then, really quickly, everything went pear-shaped, almost overnight. His business empire collapsed, completely gone, wiped out. His children died in a freak accident. They were all together, a freak accident. The house, the building they were in collapsed. Then he comes down with an untreatable illness. That includes infection, cracked skin, disfigurement, fevers and chills, diarrhea, delirium. He can't sleep or breathe properly. He's in excruciating pain. And there's a little verse in Job chapter 2 which says, basically sums it all up. He was ruined without any reason. Ruined without any reason. And you read that story and you're sort of a little bit like don't even know what to do with it. Like if you're just reading it, you just like reading it like a book or whatever, you just sort of skim over it. But I read it again through the week, of course, a few different times, and you almost felt like when you got to the end of it, like you needed to stop and like have a minute's silence or something to just acknowledge that these are not just words. This is incredible tragedy, and without any reason. I think one of the things that we learn, and in a sense it's not necessarily good news, but I think it's helpful to be aware of it, is just this sense of in this life, bad things can happen to good people. That's part of the world in which we live, isn't it? Of course, it's a problem because, partly because we long for something so much better. And the good news in the Bible is that we are destined for something better. We're destined for a place and a time in the future where everyone is judged fairly, where only good things happen to good people, and where there's no more death or mourning or crying or pain, only good things. Think for a moment of the best day of your life. The best day of your life. In heaven, you'll never have a day that bad. You'll never have a day that bad. Every day in heaven will be better than the best day you've ever had in this world. That's great to be aware of, isn't it? But in the meantime, we live in this world. And in this world, most of the time, things work out okay. Generally speaking, most of the time, good things often happen to good people, don't they? They often happen. And bad things, well, when they often happen to bad people. When people are doing stupid things or wrong things, that's often the way it works, most of the time. But sometimes bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people. That's the reality of life in this world. Part of the problem we get into, though, is because we automatically assume or react around that and jump way too quickly to, if something bad has happened, the person must be bad. And one of the great lessons from the story of Job is that, in fact, that whole way of thinking is incredibly unhelpful. And the great lesson from Job is that, in fact, when you go down there, you get yourself in all sorts of knots. And when bad things happen, there's a sense in which it's helpful to park that a little bit for a little while. That's why Job, in the early chapters, Job and his three friends who come and talk to him, they end up having such a huge argument because they're assuming that Job must be a terrible person. He looks so good on the outside, but he must actually be a really, really evil, nasty, terrible person if these things have happened to him. And Job's saying, well, I'm not a nasty, terrible, evil person. So if I'm a good person and I've done the right thing, then God must be a nasty, terrible, evil person. Neither of those ways of thinking are particularly helpful. The reality is, as we browse through Job, we discover a number of different things. We discover that sometimes bad things happen to us because we're good. Sometimes because we're good, we suffer. There's lots of people in the world right at the moment who would share our faith, who are suffering because they're Christians. They're good people, that's why they're suffering. Sometimes bad things happen to us because life is just complicated, it's flawed, and it's messy, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes bad things happen to us because there is evil in this world. And at times, terrible evil in this world. Sometimes bad things happen to us because other people do the wrong thing. Sometimes that's the reason for it. And boy, doesn't it hurt when they're people who are close to us. And sometimes bad things do happen because we put our foot in it. We muck it up. We do something stupid. We are imperfect and sinful, aren't we? But it seems to me that the thing that really creates the struggle for us when when bad things happen is not that bad things happen or that bad things can happen to good people or that good things can happen to bad people. What is the real place of the struggle is not with that academic answers or academic observations. The real struggle is personal pain. When it's personal and it really, really hurts. That's That's when it's hard, when it's a struggle. It's the depth of our personal pain. That's what it is that threatens at times to break a person's faith or integrity, as it did with Venetha, as it almost did with Job. We read with Job that, he everything he had was struck, and his flesh and bones were in agony with this incredible, untreatable illness that he was suffered. That was the struggle for him, the depth of his personal pain. One of the things I think we learn from Job in those situations when life hurts is that peace surpasses understanding. Finding a sense of being at peace with ourselves and with our God and is something that is of much greater value to us in that situation than being able to understand everything that is going on in the midst of the pain. It's interesting at the end of the book of Job, God actually somehow steps in, and there's a couple of speeches where God personally speaks directly to Job about all the conversations which have been happening before. And if you read through those conversations, if you're like me, there's all sorts of times that you can pull out the highlighter and say, oh, I've said that. Oh, I've thought that. Oh, I remember saying that to God. Oh, gee, I needed to just do a bit of a check outside and make sure there were no lightning clouds coming around after I said that. That's the nature of the sense of this incredible sense of hurt and pain. But one of the things that happens is that God speaks to him, but God doesn't even attempt to explain to Job why these things are happening to him. Instead, God asks Job a series of challenging questions about creation and the way creation is structured and the world in which we live, and these incredible questions which Job just has no capacity at all to understand or to explain. And basically what God is saying, hey, I created the heavens and the earth. I created the world that it is. I keep it running. I watch over it. It's held in my hands every single moment, every single day, every single part of it. And when I ask you simple, basic questions about this stuff that I do all the time, you can't even answer those questions. The simple questions about how this world works and how I keep it running. How then are you going to be able to understand everything that is happening in your life and in the world in these difficult times? In a sense, God helps him to have a little bit of perspective. In effect, saying to him, look, there's some stuff that happens in life that we as humans just can't get our heads around. We don't have the proper perspective to be able to judge every single thing that is happening in this world or in our lives. Instead, God says, hey, look around at my wisdom and my power. Look around at my love and faithfulness, which is seen all around you. These things demonstrate that I am ruling the world with wisdom, even if that wisdom is beyond your understanding. It's okay. My wisdom and power, my love and faithfulness are still at work, even when you can't understand everything that's going on. It reminds me of a great little verse in Philippians chapter 4. Again, you know it, we've talked about it a lot over the last little while, where Paul says, hey, don't be anxious about what's happening. Instead, pray. And when you do, the peace of God, which surpasses understanding will keep your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. That idea of surpassing there means it's more valuable than. And of course the Bible encourages us to get understanding. It's good to get understanding, to get wisdom, do those things. But there are points where something else is more valuable for us. And at times when life hurts, it's the peace of God which is more valuable to us than trying to understand every little bit of every little thing that is happening in our lives and how it all interacts with everybody else and everybody else's life, and how all of those things all work together. The second, I think, idea which we can pick up from Job and in a sense be inspired by him is that God's works are displayed in us. In a sense, in this speech, God has said, hey, look around you at the works that are happening around you. Everything's ticking over. Wisdom and power, love and faithfulness is all evident in all of that, and yet you can't understand it. You can't explain it. I'm asking some simple questions about how these things work. You don't have the answers for them, but they're ticking over. Their wisdom and power, love and faithfulness is going on. If that's the case, that we can learn. Not only can we have a sense of a little bit more peace in what's happening, but we can have a confidence that God's works will be displayed in us. Let me read to you part 2 of Vanitha's story. This wonderful story, Vanitha Rendell Risner. In high school, I started attending Christian meetings because all the popular kids were there. A friend and I would sit in the back and talk about boys. Neither of us cared about God. But then one weekend she went away on a retreat, and when she came back, she excitedly told me that God was real. Unimpressed, I asked her to stop talking about God. But she wouldn't. She kept telling me what she was learning about God and asking what I thought about it all. And I didn't care about it at all. All I cared about was that she was becoming more popular than me. And I wondered why everyone was talking about God as if they knew him. And so one night as I was falling asleep, I simply said, God, if you are real, please show me. That's a good prayer, isn't it? It's a good prayer to pray. Good prayer to pray when life hurts. The next morning I woke up and decided to give God a chance. So I had a Bible and I asked God a question. I said, why? Why did this happen to me? If you are real and you're supposed to be good. And then I randomly opened my Bible to John chapter 9 and read verse 23, I think it is, which says, as Jesus went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus said, neither this man nor his parents sinned. This happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. I sat on my bed, shocked. The disciples were asking the same question I was. But Jesus shifted the focus from whose fault it was to what purpose it served. Which meant that the man's blindness was a privilege, not a punishment. It seemed God was encouraging me to embrace my disability as an opportunity for him to display his works. The Bible was finally making sense, so I kept reading. 2 or 3 chapters later, the story of Lazarus exposed me. When Jesus said about the Pharisees that they loved human praise more than praise from God. Jesus was talking about me. I thrived on the praise I won with my act. Everyone thought I was kind. But God saw beyond my angelic exterior. I felt known, understood, and unconditionally loved. A combination that both comforted and terrified me. Overcome with excitement and emotion, I knelt by the side of my bed and committed my life to Christ. Struck by a fascinating little verse in the story of a man who'd been born blind, where Jesus simply said, hey, his parents didn't sin, he didn't sin. It happened so that God's work might be displayed in his life. And at the end of Job, it's that realisation that even though Job can't understand everything that's going on, that he can have confidence that God is working in his life in some way. It's that realisation that turns things around for Job. He gladly abandons his complaints against God because he's suddenly aware that he can trust God to accomplish something that is worthwhile from this undeserved suffering. Even if he can't understand it, even if he can't see it right then, right there, he can trust God that he will accomplish something worthwhile. And of course, if we were to go into the pages of the New Testament, we see that theme coming up again and again and again. In times of difficulty or suffering, we're reminded that it's not God who tempts us, that he only intends things for good, that he doesn't do the bad things in life. Instead, every good and perfect gift comes from God, that in times of difficulty, God steps into those times to use them, that we might share his holiness, that we might be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing, that we might find down the track a hope that doesn't disappoint us. The good news is that even when life hurts, God's purpose is to display his works in our lives. I think that leads us to our time of communion this morning. In the Old Testament, when God turned up and started having a chat to Job, he talked about creation and how creation demonstrated his wisdom and power, his love and faithfulness. In the New Testament, we have something else. In addition to God's character and purposes revealed in the world and in his creation, God has also revealed his character and purposes to us in the cross. It's his wisdom and power, his love and faithfulness that we see again and again and again as we think about the cross, as we meet each week for communion, that demonstrate to us that he is working all things together for the good of those who love him, and that nothing can separate us from his love. It's in Romans 8 that God talks about, those scriptures talk about God working all things together and nothing separating us from his love. But before Paul makes those two comments, he introduces them with another idea, which is the foundation for them. He says this: if God did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, will he not also, along with Christ, graciously give us all things? If he didn't spare his own Son, if his love and faithfulness, his wisdom and power are demonstrated in the cross, then how much more confident can we be that he will not also give us Christ, but along with him all things? Friends, as we have communion this morning, let me encourage you. Let's use this time to pray for those situations where life hurts, knowing that God is at work, that even when we can't understand them, that he is working to display his purposes, his works in our lives. Let's use communion, though, as an opportunity to pray. Maybe to pray about a difficult situation that you are personally facing. Maybe to pray for somebody you know and love who's going through a really difficult situation at the moment. We're going to take communion now. As we do, please make your way to one of the tables at the front or the back. Grab some bread and juice and make your way back to your seat and use it as a time for prayer. And if you're at home, please join us now in communion as well. Thank you.
As we finish today, we think of the hard times that Job went through and the journey that he went through, but it's good. Some of the verses that Mark brought out today, things like do not be anxious about anything. These verses all through Scripture remind us that God's word is true, that he keeps his promises. So as we go out today, would you stand? Let's sing this song together, You Keep Your Word.
In it.
Thank you so much for worshipping with us today, whether you be here in person or online. We hope to join with you again next week at the normal times of 9, 11 and 6 p.m. I'd like to just pray a blessing prayer before we go. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Enjoy.
Thanks everyone for joining us in our online worship. It's been fantastic to have you with us. We'd love to continue to be able to connect with you and to help you in any way that we can. How could that happen? Hey, maybe you could like us on Facebook. Maybe you could jump on our webpage and find out some more information about us. Maybe you could send us an email or give us a phone call. If there's any way we can help you, we would really love it if you would let us know. And of course, we'd love to be able to meet you in person. Let me extend a personal invitation for you to come along one Sunday to our worship services here at 1-to-1, and so that we can have an opportunity to meet you in person. That'd be absolutely fantastic. In the meantime, may God bless you. May he fill your hearts with his love and his joy and his peace. Thanks so much. Hope to see you soon.